mean, what I would share, because I'm a success story, right? That it is possible,
Yeah.
and I'm living proof. You can do it. You can do it the right way and actually get through it. And you just have to be, to succeed. You have to be very careful about the steps you take, and you have to make sacrifices. My name is Raymond Kondo. I'm originally from Budapest, Hungary.
Let's start here. Why did you come to the U.S. and why did you want to be here as opposed to Hungary?
Back in high school, so I was going to high school in Hungary, and my mom uh, was really upset with my math teacher because she was not doing a good job teaching us, and she really tried to work with the other parents and the school to get us someone a good math teacher. And nobody really cared. The school didn't care. The parents didn't care. So she kind of just gave in and started looking at alternatives. And she started looking at scholarships, just 1 year exchange programs to the United States, to the United Kingdom, Austria, Germany, stuff like that. Just for me to get away for a year, learn English, or actually get fluent, because I've been learning English, but and then come back into another class in Hungary. And that little spark, it just sort of spiraled into something that now I've been in the States for 12 years and went to high school, college, and I've been working for over 5 years. So it started out with a bad math teacher, and it ended up me, getting a really prestigious scholarship. I was really lucky, and that kind of snowballed into everything else.
There are a couple of things that I want to break down there, which is why was math education so important to your mom? And then I'd also like to dive into your English education background, because I wanted to comment, you have excellent English. From day one, you had excellent English. And not every immigrant does. And so I just kind of wanted to ask you, what was your experience learning English, both abroad and in the US? And then why is math so important to your family, to your mom, to you?
It's almost like people here in the States learning Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And they could say, "Oh, well, I'm actually pretty good at Spanish. I've been learning it all through, middle school, high school." And then they go abroad, they go to Spain, and they can ask for water, and then they switch over to English, because it's actually really hard. So I grew up learning English. Ever since I was I don't know, 5 years old. And I thought I was really good at it. And then I came over to the States when I was 16. And in high school, I was like, okay, I can understand everything, right? But communicating and thinking and connecting those dots, that was still a challenge.
Mm.
And then the math part is, I take a lot of pride, and Hungarians take a lot of pride in math education and sciences and physics and all that sort. So that was always just a big part of my life, and I used to play chess a lot growing up, and so my parents just really wanted me to have a good math education, because it's just so ingrained in us that we are good at math and good at sciences. So my dad was an engineer, or he's still working as an engineer. So, yeah.
And so education was important to you. I really like what you mentioned about some of these culture things. And so would you say that that's Hungarian culture, or just kind of your family culture, like in terms of the math and the studies?
It's definitely a mix.
Mm-hmm.
My parents both are highly educated, and they really, I'm an only child, so they raised me well, and they put a lot of effort into, raising me, and that's why, when they noticed that the school was not delivering, that they wanted to do something. So, oftentimes parents can just not pay full attention, and the kids can get lost. But I was very fortunate that I had parents that truly cared and wanted me to get the best education possible. So I was going to a really good school in Hungary. I think it's now the second best school in the city or in the country. When I was there, it was not as good, but that's pretty amazing. And so education was always important. And I think when we all looked at what the U.S. could provide in terms of education, now we can talk about private versus public, of course, but especially the private education, if one can be fortunate enough to get scholarships, is in my opinion the best in the world. So that was a big draw for us to apply, and for me to leave my country and my family and friends when I was 16 and go on this journey.
That's amazing. So you came to the U.S. and it was at a private school? It was a scholarship to a private school or a public school here in the United States?
It was a private school. I know a lot of people do public school exchanges. I was really lucky that I received a scholarship called United World College Scholars, UWC, and it was set up by an investment person named Shelby Davis, whose grandson I actually met in Richmond a couple years back. So I work in the investment industry, and he works in the same industry. So we were at the same event at the same time and bumped into him. So I was able to thank him because that was a major financial contribution. And he likes to joke about how that's where his inheritance went, financing
Nice.
thousands and thousands of these kids, because
cool.
we all compete to get the scholarship, and then they kind of place you into a private boarding school in mainly New England. And so that was a whole new world for me. I was fortunate growing up that I was able to travel a lot. So my parents and I would go across Europe, travel into different countries, see different cultures. So I feel like I was prepared as much as I could be. But yeah, that's a whole different world, these private boarding schools.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is a different world. It's not one that many people know. So for me, one of my questions is, what were the biggest kind of cultural differences that you noticed when you arrived at the United States? How were things different, perhaps in ways you didn't expect and ways that you did expect? What was that transition period like?
For me, coming from Hungary, from Europe, I did not have to adjust as much as, let's say, someone coming from a completely different culture, religious background. So that's a tough question for me, because I was able to integrate relatively easily, and because to me most things here were normal, and maybe there was just more of things, and cars were bigger, and people. I still remember one of my best friends in high school. We went to a store because he had to buy some jeans, and with my parents, I would get like a pair of jeans, and then that's good for like a year or two. and then we went in, and he just ordered like 5, and I'm just like, why do you need 5? And he's like, well, just to have them. So
so that was a cultural difference, huh?
I guess that was a cultural difference. But I mean, that's just a funny example.
Yeah.
I didn't have like a culture shock coming from Europe. I did not feel that. I noticed that public transportation was not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Not at
Distances were
all.
much greater.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, People spoke a different language, but the mannerisms, the major religions, how people thought, um, was the customs very similar. Yeah, we don't have Thanksgiving, but Christmas is a major holiday for us.
Hmm.
For a lot of people in the States, it is. It's so I didn't have a major culture shock.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think perhaps also the age helped, but when I have conversations with people about immigrants and things like that, and different cultures in different countries. So I learned Spanish in Argentina. I lived abroad 2 years, and I had one of the experiences that I had kind of taught me that people are the same everywhere. It seems a little odd maybe to cite this example, but I had a friend who was very Argentine and very proud to be Argentine. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that because people here are proud to be Americans, that kind of thing. Um, but it was interesting. We saw the movie The Incredibles, which is this family, and it's a U.S. based movie, but they took the extra step of like getting Argentine actors to do the Argentine Spanish for the voiceover for that movie. And at the end of the movie, when we finished it, he goes, "Yeah, they're just a typical Argentine family." But what was interesting is like they're a typical U.S. family, right? And I think kind of all over the
Hmm.
world, when you break down some of these cultural barriers, people realize they're just a typical family. Like human beings, we tend to have more in common than we perhaps think we do when we come from different cultures. So I think that's I like your response. I think it's good, and it's valid. And some people might have more culture shock than others, but I like how you kind of approach that. I'd like to move to like, so you went from high school then to college, and then of course you stayed in math. So you mentioned being in the investment sector and the investment industry, right, for your job. So
Yes.
what were the choices behind college, where you went, those kinds of things?
I don't know how much of my story is based on luck, right? And we will never know. So I can talk about, here's all the steps that I did and look how well it turned out. But I just don't know how much, maybe 80% of it was luck, maybe 20%. I don't know. But I personally feel that getting that scholarship was uh, very lucky. I was at the right place at the right time, and they selected me. But that set me up on a course that others might not have. So, for example, after high school, they gave me a list of 100 schools in the states that if I could get into, they would continue to sponsor me at those
Oh
schools
wow.
with the same financial sum. So yeah, that's a it was I just had to get into one of those 100, and I think it can be so overwhelming, especially for younger immigrants who don't have family here to know like how this education system works, the SAT, ACT, applications,
Yeah.
essays, where should we go? There are 1,000 schools. So just having that list kind of narrowed it down for me, and I was able to, I applied to a lot of schools, and um, I was in a situation that I had to have basically a full scholarship. I could not have been able to pay 10, 20, 30,000 a year.
Right.
So luckily, University of Richmond offered me more scholarships and financial aid. So I was able to go there. And I picked University of Richmond because I I think if you want to make it as an immigrant and want to actually have a good shot at staying, you want to go into something like computer science or something like that, economics, finance. But that's again, it's already way harder. So
Hmm.
computer science, hard sciences, that's easier. Finance, business, at least you will get some opportunities, but you will have to really fight to stay after school. I think it all depends on what people want to get out of this experience. If
Mm.
they just want to, um, like I know, I had a lot of friends from Asian countries, so mainly China. It's very popular. They come to the U.S. and they study at the university. But what I noticed was they tended to stick to their group. So they spoke Chinese. They kind of they were together as a group. And I was the one Hungarian, and I was just with all the other kids at university, and my goal was not to go back after or I wanted to at least pursue um, finding a job after my studies.
So I want to talk
And
to you about that. Was there ever a point where you felt homesick or you thought, "Oh, I want to go back"? Because from the time that I've known you, it's been, look, I need to get this green card. I want to stick around. I want to be here in the United States. And so why is that? Is it an American dream thing in part, or is it personal preference? What's the drive behind that?
I think it was just the opportunities that in the States. I mean, I know people tend to think that the present situation is always the worst and people had it way better in the past. People tend to romanticize the past, but I mean, I think that personally, coming to this country, I still see that there is an American dream if you work really hard. I think there are a lot of opportunities, and I can say that because I I grew up in Hungary in Europe, which is it's not a poor country. It's a European country. It has a good education system, but it doesn't have anywhere close the opportunities in terms of the diversity of education, the diversity of the job market, and opportunities that the U.S. has. So for me, I looked at it as an opportunity, and I've been able to kind of take the steps and work hard and climb.
I want to highlight how complicated it can be, even for people who do it legally in our immigration system. And so, kind of, what were your feelings as you graduated college? And I know you had an internship, right? So you were able to work with Taylor Hoffman. So let's give a shout out to your employer. Great people. But what was your experience kind of graduating college and thinking, okay, what's my next step if I am going to stick around? And like your feelings, your stressors, your lack of stress. What was that like? Your experience?
Well, it was terrifying because, like for me, I went to high school here, then college, then had a job offer, and we were still hanging by a thread throughout that whole
Mm-hmm.
process of
Yeah.
whether I could even stay in the country. I had to apply to I applied to hundreds of jobs. I've done dozens of interviews, and that's what I think I did really well in college, really well in high school, really well in college. I worked my ass off with just joining different school organizations, and I did everything I could, to have a really good resume, and it was a struggle, and I think that's where most people kind of give up on the
Mm.
immigration process. People that would be really valuable additions to this country, people that really like this country. I love this country. I think I I don't want to. Yeah, I really love this country truly. So I think after college, it's just incredibly hard to get a job as an international. And what happens is most people give up and they have to go back, to their country. So I felt a lot of pressure. It was a lot of you only have, that's why I mentioned sciences. With sciences, you have the STEM OPT, so you get at least 3 years to get a job and try to
Mm-hmm.
figure out the process. If you don't have a science degree, you get 1 year. So you're on a 1 year, maybe 3 year timer to get a job, get sponsored, get an H-1B or a green card. And that was a very stressful moment in my life for sure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I like how you said. So I want to cover a couple things that I think can be topics of interest to people who are going to see this. Which is, you said I love this country, I love the U.S., but that can still be true. But it can also be true that our immigration system maybe isn't what it needs to be, right? You expressed that there are a number of people that our nation would probably benefit if they stuck around. And so there is, for me at least, an inclination to say, hey, maybe we should make it a little easier to keep bright people like yourself. And it did work out for you, and I'm happy that that did. I want to also go over OPT. You mentioned OPT, so that's optional practical training that immigrants who have college degrees can engage in after they graduate. So they have an option to work, typically for a year, or like you mentioned, up to additional years. And so in your scenario, originally, you were only given what, 1 year?
1 year, yes, because I had a finance and economics degree,
Mm-hmm.
and that only qualified, it was a Bachelor of Arts at that point. So I think it only qualified for 1 year.
And so when we came in, I remember you came with your employer and talked to us about employment visa options. And one of the things we looked at that I thought was actually really fascinating and fun about your case was that we discovered that a number of colleges and universities were classifying your degree as a STEM degree, whereas previously, like you mentioned, it hadn't been. And so one of the cool things we did in your case is we reached out to University of Richmond and said, hey, look, this other universities are doing this, very prestigious ones. Could you change your policy? Can we please include Raymond and make sure that he gets additional OPT time so that we have enough time to go through the perm process? And I'm happy to report that obviously worked out for us and for you. But what were those conversations like with the university? What were those conversations like with your employer? Did you feel like you had your hat in hand, or did you feel, confident that this is going to work out? Tell us about that aspect.
I did not feel confident about the process at all. I felt confident about you helping me throughout the process, and my employer helping me. But the whole immigration process itself and dealing with the applications and everything, it terrified me, because that's actually a great story. That whole U of R, how it happened. Do you want me to talk about that?
Yes, by all means, go ahead.
So after school, my company and I decided we were looking at the H-1B visa, which I would say 90% of internationals will go for. And you can be the most qualified person, and it's still a lottery system. So it's not a merit-based selection process for merit-based people, because these are all highly educated people with job offers who might be able to stay, and it's based on a lottery. So
I'm going to jump in and kind of explain
yes,
the
yeah.
H-1Bs for a second for people
Yeah.
who are listening. So there are only 65,000 H-1Bs that are issued each year that are subject to this cap. And then there's an additional amount that's for cap exempt applicants. And these are all highly educated, highly qualified people that our economy could really use. But like you said, no matter how qualified you are, it literally is a lottery, because they get more applicants than they have visas available. And so H-1Bs may not be the right fit for every applicant, but for many companies, they will gear up and do H-1Bs every single year. But that wasn't your case. Your employer was willing to operate a little differently. So
Yeah, so I was really fortunate, and again, the factor of luck. I can tell everyone that, hey, if you want to have a better shot, maybe try to work at a smaller company where, you're just not an H-1B case, but they actually work with you and want to help you. But I don't know, maybe I was just lucky that I had great, employers who worked with me. But we decided to apply for the green card straight away, no H-1B, and that process, unfortunately, takes more than a year. And I had a 1-year OPT optional training, as you mentioned. So we were running out of time. And that's when, as you said, we noticed that some schools were changing their economics degrees into a science so that it would qualify for a 3-year optional training. And that's when I still remember, I looked this up before we did this, the emails. And I know you wrote this stunning letter to the university that I then, sent in, and they actually went through the process of changing the economics degree to a STEM, so a 3-year, that would qualify for a 3-year work program. But they only made that available as of the next school year or something like that. So
right.
So
at
we
first, they didn't
accomplished
want to
our
include
goal.
you. At first, they were like, "No, we'll do it, but we
Yes.
won't keep Raymond." Go ahead.
Exactly. So
Keep going.
so they went through the whole thing, and then I remember I went into the international office, and the head of the international office told me that they it's going to be effective as of next year, and unfortunately you're out of options. You probably should explore going back to your country. And that's when I was just like, you know what? I'm not doing that. And I stayed on campus. I left the office, and I have to give a big shout out to the registrar's office at the University of Richmond. The lady there, she heard my case. I told her everything, and I just know she told me that, okay, I'm gonna talk to the board, and let's see what we can do. And then like a week later, they let me know that they changed the decision, and they made it effective as of last year, or basically so that I could also qualify.
Right.
And so that was, I mean, hanging by a thread. I mean, we were like this close, right? And it worked out, and I was able to get the 3-year extent or 2-year extension on my 1 year, which gave us just enough time to actually submit everything for the green card and then get the green card.
Yeah, to continue to pursue that. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about your case. Like, I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy working with the people that I help. But one of the things that I really liked about your case was this unique element and making changes at the University of Richmond, great school, but making changes that not only benefited you, but benefited others. And that's just really gratifying to me. And I'm so happy that they made that change. And I'm also very, very happy that they made that change for you. I want to talk about the decision to go straight for the green card with your employer and how your employer worked with you on that. But one of the questions that I want to bring up, if you don't mind, I know that you have a U.S. citizen girlfriend. And we always bring up when we have these consults is, well, you could just get married to your U.S. citizen girlfriend and apply for the green card that way. Why not do that? Why did you want to do it the employment route? And I'm just kind of curious about your reasonings and your thoughts in that direction.
I never really thought about that option, or I'm sure it came up, but I was just so set on this path of going to high school and then going to college and making sure that I did well. And I had these goals, right? Like just how everybody else has goals. And I wanted to do well in high school, then get into a good college and do well there, and then get a job. And that was always my priority. So I actually never really focused on that aspect. And I don't know how I would feel sort of cheating the system or gaming the system. I did not want to get married that way. I I really I want to get married once, and I want to stay married for life, and so I really value that.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's sacred, and yeah, I think I wanted to do this the right way, on my own, and with my parents' help, with your help, with my company's help. But I just wanted to do this the right way, and we did it the right way. And and then once everything was figured out and I got the green card, that's when I started, getting more serious about relationships
Hmm.
and all that. And yeah, I've been with my girlfriend for almost 4 years now, and it's also, it makes me feel really good that I don't have that chip on my shoulder, that it doesn't even have to come up. I have a green card through my work, right?
Hmm.
And there's no motive behind me wanting to date an American citizen. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think you'd expressed something to that effect before, which was this idea of like not wanting her to think that you have some kind of ulterior motive, right? That you've got the immigration side handled on your own terms, and I think that's a pretty cool feeling. It's a great sentiment. So, how long? What was the green card process like for you outside of? So we handled the OPT issue with the school. What about the other steps? So, in your case, in a perm situation, the employer has to get a labor certification. They have to do a recruitment process, and then finally they petition for you and you apply for the green card. How involved were you in that process, or was that pretty passive for you?
It was actually not as active as one would think. I mean, um, your team handled everything on the legal side perfectly, right? And my employer had to handle as you mentioned, the getting all the applications, and then qualifying the firm, and then interviewing for my job, which that was the toughest part. They basically had to interview across, like, I don't know, 3 to 5 months,
How'd that
and all
feel
these
knowing that
different
they were
venues.
interviewing other people for the job you were doing?
Yeah, that was terrifying. And they had like a whole checklist, right? Because
Hmm.
from the government, you get a checklist, and it's everything by the book. And you have to make sure you interview X amount of people through all these different venues. You advertise the job through all these different venues. And then every interviewee, I still remember those like sheets, and like, okay, this person does not qualify because of X, Y, and Z. And I sure remember, like, maybe there was like one person that got close, right, to matching my qualifications, but there was like one big missing piece,
Hmm.
and that disqualified him. But yeah, that was terrifying. I was basically already working for the company for well over a year, right? I was doing well. I was working hard. My Everyone at the company really, I hope, liked me.
Well, you're still
And
there, so I think they do.
yes, yes. So, and we were going through this process. We joke about this, but one of the co-founders, Gabe Hoffman, he told me that, after this whole process, you have to name your firstborn son after me. And I think there's like a 20% chance that he's still serious about that. Uh, be- yeah, because he had to go and drive to college campuses, and do all this interviewing and recruiting. It was a very involved process
Yeah,
for them.
recruitment is involved for employers, and so frequently when we talk to employers about green card visas, we'll have a lot of employers come to us and say, "Yeah, let me know how I can help." And then when we explain the process and the prevailing wage and other things, a lot of them are like, Well, I don't know that we're willing to do that. And so you are
No.
fortunate. You had an employer who was willing to go to bat for you. But one of the things that I think is interesting is you mentioned that recruitment process, which you weren't involved in any way, right? So I imagine what you shared, you kind of told me you kind of heard after the fact. But yeah, I mean, so there were people who were close to being qualified. But this goes to what you were talking about, the STEM degree and the high qualifications that so many immigrant applicants have. It really is hard to find a U.S. citizen who has some of these skills, which is one of the things that has to be proved before you can get a green card. And so what are your skills? What's your skill set that made it possible for you to kind of get through this recruitment process?
Just looking at my resume, um, I had some experience at an asset management firm
Mm-hmm.
working. I had an experience at uh, a large financial institution called PwC that was considered a very prestigious internship. I was in the investment club at University of Richmond, which was it was a very selective club that managed a part of the university's endowment. So you had to apply to get in and go through a process. Um, I had really good grades. I was also an athlete. I played on on my country's national team, tennis team when I was younger. And I was just really, really motivated and driven about the world of finance and investment. So I was reading every book, everything I could get my hands on that really made me stick out and just be on another. Not that I'm doing anything crazy or life saving, but I I put in a lot of work. I clearly had passion, and I had a great resume. I had a great story, and you know, employers, I think they value that. Now, the process is so difficult that oftentimes um, they will still toss you to the side. Like to get an employer-based green card, like this process that we just described is so incredibly hard that, I mean, we're talking about, I don't know the numbers, but it's a very few number of people that can actually get through this, right? So I think it's in the best interest of, truly in the best interest of companies to hire Americans. Because why go through this hassle and this limbo and spend almost 3 years? So, yeah.
We spent the time, we got the OPT extended, we applied for the green card. It finally comes in. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What was that like for you?
I think getting the green, it's actually a little bit anticlimactic, almost it, it's like you're trying to climb, a mountain, and you go through all these challenges, and you train for it, and you spend years training, and then you go on the hike, and you keep climbing, and then you get to the top, and you're like, okay, this is great. But I've seen the view from pictures, yeah, this is awesome, but okay, now what? And I think I think as human beings, we just love challenges, and I was challenged ever since I left my family, and which was a big sacrifice, at 16, leaving my entire family, all my friends, and choose this path. I was challenged, and I was really busy. And once you get through all the process, of course, you feel incredibly grateful, this huge weight lifted off your shoulder. But then you have to move on to, right? Okay, now what? And life goes on. And so that was an interesting adjustment. So of course I was really happy.
Yeah.
But I had to then figure out, okay, what is the next challenge?
And so are you talking about immigration challenges or just life challenges generally?
I think at that point, that was like the first time when I could breathe and I could just be sort of like a normal person in the States who just works, pays taxes, and,
From
you
16
know,
till point
rents.
of green card approval, it was that stressful for you, kind of knowing that
Y-
this life I'm building
yes.
might
I
be taken
mean,
away from me.
yes, I had to basically, I think to make it, you have to just be very conscious about every step
Mm.
and really have to plan it out, and you cannot goof off and do other stuff. You you know, if you want to do a different major, you want to be a history major. I love history, but I could not choose even a minor in history. I had to focus on being the best candidate in my field, right? So that I could get through this process. So it was just,
So when do you plan to apply for citizenship when you're eligible, which is coming up a couple of years?
yes. I think it's coming up in 2 years.
Hmm.
It's a 5 year.
5 year wait time between
Once you get,
green card to the citizenship. Yep.
yes. So I'm going to, of course, apply. And I mean, but by that time, I I could be married, right? Um, but it's not that it changes anything in the process.
Not at this
After
point.
the 5 year
Right.
is up, not at this point. After the 5 years is up, I'm going to apply, take the test, do the interview, and become an American citizen. So yeah, that's the, I guess, the next chapter in the immigration journey for me.
And how does your girlfriend feel about this? How does your family feel about this? This idea of like the U.S. is my home now, and I'm going to be a citizen. I'm going to have a U.S. passport. What are those thoughts like and conversations like?
I think my parents are really happy. Of course, they really had to sacrifice a lot because I'm an only child,
Hmm.
and so they really sacrificed, and but they know that I'm doing well, and I'm healthy, and I have a life here, and they still live back home, and I don't see a reason why they would leave Hungary and where they live.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, uh, hopefully they can visit me more. I mean, COVID was a really tough period, but
Yes.
yes. But now that everything opened back up, I can go back and forth. My girlfriend really, she's been to Hungary now twice, and she really likes Europe, and we have like a home base, right, in Hungary. So we go back, we see my parents, and then we can travel to another country. So it's a great perk for her, um, that she can be a little bit like European as well. So
That's fun.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think I think everyone is happy. Yeah.
that's good. And so, kind of rounding out the discussion, what are your thoughts about the U.S. immigration process? You know, you've shared your experience. What do you like? What do you not like? What would you change? And then we'll take it there. And then I have some other questions just about the immigrant experience as well.
I think the whole process, and that's coming from, a person that did everything by the book.
Hmm.
I mean, literally everything by the book.
Yeah.
And it worked, and it was painful. And we're talking years and just stressful situations. And I guess it is doable, but I would hope that, a nation with over 350 million people. I mean, we're talking about when you mentioned the H-1B is 65,000
Yeah. I think it's
a year.
85,000 total, but 20,000 are cap exempt. And so it's a special group for
Yeah.
for specialized reasons. And then the 65,000. Yeah.
But so I wish that the cap would increase, and the whole process can stay the same, right? I'm not asking for the process to be easier on me. I would just hope that more people like me could actually get to the end, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of people that I follow, from the investment world, from just successful people, they are, pushing and advocating for more talent, because this country, it is in a talent war, and so far it's been winning the talent war, and that's why it's been so successful. I mean, after my country was invaded by the Russians, right, and communism was installed. I mean, we had scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project, who invented the nuclear chain reaction, who came over to the States to do that work during
Right.
World War II. And that talent, and I'm not that person, right? I'm just an average Joe.
You're like, I just do
But-
finance. That's all.
Yeah, I just do finance. It's not, yeah.
Nuclear
So
science. Yeah,
but-
I got it.
exactly. But I think we need those people. And I say we because, I'm here in this country and I pay taxes and I want this country to succeed. And I think we need more immigrants like that. And I think this country could handle more immigrants like myself.
So I think
So-
that's very interesting, because that's the specific example I was about to bring up, which is a lot of countries, and we talk about, southern border crisis and immigrants and those kinds of things. Most of the immigrants I meet, and we also talk about brain drain, right? That's the phrase that they've used when they talk about World War II and those eras, is brain drain. Like, countries will lose sometimes some of their best and brightest. And so my experience with immigrants coming to the U.S. is, I would say the vast majority are the best and brightest from their countries, from all over the world. And they come for, and I would include you in that list, even though you don't do nuclear science, Raymond. And so we have some of the best and brightest people coming from all over the world to come here. And I think we're missing out if we make our immigration process so difficult that we have a brain drain, where we bring people in and we educate them and then we say, get out, in one way or another, either bureaucratically or actually. And so that's, just, it's something to think about. And I think it's an important part of the conversation is, what are we doing to retain very talented people, very hardworking people, which in my experience is largely the immigrant story, right? And so I want to thank you for bringing that up. Now, as far as, what would you say to immigrants, other immigrants, people who are doing it the right way, so the legal immigration, people who have come under less than ideal circumstances, so humanitarian immigration or undocumented immigration? What kinds of thoughts would you say or share with anybody like that?
I mean, what I would share, because I'm a success story, right? That it is possible, and I'm living proof. You can do it. You can do it the right way and actually get through it. And you just have to be, to succeed. You have to be very careful about the steps you take, and you have to make sacrifices, right? You have to think about, okay, what school do I go to? What do I study? I mentioned, the sciences or something in finance, and you have to stick to that, and you have to sacrifice hobbies or other activities, and you have to be very intentional about what you want to accomplish. And you have to know that even if you do all those steps, it might not work out. But for me, I just wanted to do it the right way, and I wanted to try and give it all. And if I failed, I would still, keep my head up high and go back to Europe, and maybe not Hungary. Maybe I would have gone to the UK or Switzerland, and I would have been fine. But obviously, I wanted to stay in this country because I really liked this country from the beginning. I really liked the relationships, friendships I've built. So I was not really keen on going to the UK. I mean, the weather is not that great, and I have my other reasons. The food is not good. I'm sorry.
There's great food
Okay.
here in the U.S. Yeah.
Great food. Not my favorite. The British food is not my favorite. I love fish and chips, but
Yeah.
I think I think it's doable. It is a very hard journey, and I think anyone, no matter how they do it, but they are sacrificing a lot. And I can't speak for people that come through other means than me, but what I know is they also have families and, parents that they leave behind,
Yeah.
or siblings or friends, homes, lives, which for me, you mentioned, did I feel ever depressed or homesick?
Right.
And when I was 17, like 1 year in, I felt really, really alone. And I felt like I was just sort of in between two countries, and I was just like in the middle of the ocean, kind of suffocating. So um, I think, you know, this process really weeds out a lot of people, and whoever stays should keep their head up high. And I think they are a valuable member of society, and they will be hardworking. And I would hope that they would be a net positive when we look at the country as a whole.
Yeah. I really appreciated, like you mentioned, you like the United States. And early on in the interview, and I want to go back to this because you said we have a way of romanticizing the past, and people talk about present, I imagine, political considerations and those kinds of things. And so I just wanted to ask you, how do you see the U.S. today in terms of those kinds of, I guess, conflict issues? Have you noticed any difference in how people treated you as an immigrant under different presidential administrations? Obama, Trump, Biden. Were you here when Bush was president or not?
No,
No,
no.
no. So those presidential administrations, like, what has that experience been like, and why do you still have hope and say, people are romanticizing the past? It's actually pretty good right here, right now. Can you go into that a little?
I went through Obama, Trump, Biden throughout this whole experience, and I think it was pretty consistent throughout those presidencies. It was consistently painful and challenging, but I didn't notice anything different. What I would say is that when I talk to my parents about, and of course, they have their worries. I mean, there is Russia right next to Hungary borders Ukraine,
Mm.
so they are worried about Russia, but they are also worried about the U.S., and China and Taiwan, and the political situation in this country, and the polarization of the right and the left. So, but what I say is to that is that this country is still very young, and my country is 1,500 years old. So this country is still a little baby, and it has one of the largest deposits of natural resources. It has the best borders, maybe not in the south, but left and right, there are two oceans. So if China or any other foreign country would even think about invading, they have to cross an ocean first. So that's really, just for me, as I think about my future and my future family, I feel comfortable having, an army that is incredibly technologically advanced, the natural borders, the resources that are in this country in terms of energy, food, agriculture, the technology that's in this country. Yes, healthcare could be better, and housing could be more affordable, and all those things. But if you want to see bad housing, go to Canada. Um, if you want to complain about the gas prices, yes, they could be better, but go back to Europe and see you're going to pay double. I think this country still has a very long way ahead. It has a lot of room to grow in terms of population. It has actually a great demographic situation. So if you look at China, China is actually aging rapidly, and the U.S., thanks to actually immigration
Yeah.
has been staying relatively young, which if I'm talking again, my family decades out, I like that because that means there's going to be less strain on social security and social programs. Yes, it's going to get relatively worse, but we are still going to be better off than any country in Europe, than most Asian countries. So the US dollar still is the reserve currency of the world, and I don't see that rapidly changing. So I think there are so many positives about this country, and I just don't say that as a little positive immigrant. I do this for a living, so I read a lot about it and I worry a lot about it. So I feel overall very good about this country's prospects.
I like kind of the approach that you took, because one of the things that has surprised me when I've spoken to some immigrants in the U.S., particularly those from Europe, interestingly enough, is the security situation you mentioned. Because I had one immigrant tell me, she said, when I want to feel safe, I come to the United States, which I thought was just unique. Like that was a perspective I'd never thought of before. And all the time we see on the news and those kinds of things, mass shootings in the U.S., this, that, and the other. But to have this woman tell me as an immigrant, I believe she was Russian, to say, yeah, when I want to feel safe, I come to the United States. And I'm glad that immigrants feel safe here in the United States. And I wish that's the experience for everyone. I hope it is. Raymond, I want to thank you. I'm cognizant of your time. You've been an exceptionally, eloquent speaker on some of these issues, some of these immigration issues, and I really, truly do appreciate it. So thank you for coming and visiting me here for Nation of Immigrants. It's been wonderful to hear your immigrant story, and I knew you pretty well before, but I feel like I know you so much better now, and it's really fun. And it's really fun to see you years after getting the green card, seeing that you're still at Taylor Hoffman, still having success.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me and having this talk. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.